Welcome to Essential Libertarianism, selected readings from voluntarist.com. Essential Libertarianism is voluntarism. Let's reclaim the anti-political heritage of this philosophy together. The essays and books we read in this show will bring us closer to the state-free voluntary society that we desire. Let's begin the journey.
Non-Voting by Karl WATNER. In his On the Duty of Civil Disobedience, 1849, Henry David Thoreau asked, "How does it become a man to behave towards this American government today? I answer that he cannot, without disgrace, be associated with it. What I have to do is to see, at any rate, that I do not lend myself to the wrong which I condemn." Readers of Strike the Root recognize that there are two principal demands that their governments make upon them: pay your taxes and vote. Of course, there are many other demands, such as military service, send your children to school, have a driver's license, etc., but many of these are ancillary to the primary means of government survival, which is the collection of taxes. Now, of these two principal demands, taxation carries criminal sanctions. Pay your money, or we imprison your body and or confiscate your property. However, as yet, in most nations of the world, failure to vote in government elections carries no penalty. Governments, like all other hierarchical institutions, depend upon the cooperation and at least the tacit consent over those whom they exercise power. In other words, government soldiers and police can force people to do things they don't want to do, but in the long run, in the face of adamant opposition, such coercion is either too expensive or too futile to accomplish its goals of subjugating entire populations. It is far simpler to motivate people to do what you want them to do, rather than forcing them to do it by pointing guns at them all the time. As Boris Yeltsin supposedly said, you can build a throne with bayonets, but you can't sit on it long. Educating generations of parents and children in government schools and teaching them to be patriotic and support their government in political elections is one of the fundamental ways governments garner public support. Citizens are taught that it is both their right and duty to vote. But all this is done with an ulterior motive in mind. As Theodore Lowy in his book Incomplete Conquest, Governing America pointed out, participation is an instrument of government conquest because it encourages people to give their consent to being governed. Deeply embedded in people's sense of fair play is the principle that those who play the game must accept the outcome. Those who participate in politics are similarly committed, even if they are consistently on the losing side. Why do politicians plead with everyone to get out and vote? Because voting is the simplest and easiest form of participation, of supporting the state by masses of people. Even though it is minimal participation, it is sufficient to commit all voters to being governed, regardless of who wins. Voluntarism is perhaps the most important libertarian philosophy, and this podcast is designed to give you a piece of that. But there is a ton of other information out there on the topic of voluntarism. This is why we've compiled an easy list of great voluntarist resources in one location as a one-stop shop for the very best voluntarist content out there. From authors such as Lysander Spooner, Henry David Thoreau, Etienne de la Boétie, Larkin Rose, Karl WATNER, Herbert Spencer, and more at essentiallibertarianism.com/books. The best part is that every time you buy something from that list, you help support this show without having to pay a penny extra. So go to essentiallibertarianism.com/books today to start or accelerate your journey to the only non-political, non-violent strategy to achieve a free society and help us delegitimize the state. essentiallibertarianism.com/books. Not voting in government elections is one way of refusing to participate, of refusing to consent to government rule over your life. Non-voting may be seen as an act of personal secession, of exposing the myth behind government by consent. There are many reasons, both moral and practical, for choosing not to vote, and they have been discussed in my anthology, Dissenting Electorate. To briefly summarize, truth does not depend upon a majority vote. 2 + 2 = 4 regardless of how many people vote then it equals 5. Individuals have rights which do not depend on the outcome of elections. Majorities of voters cannot vote away the rights of a single individual or groups of individuals. Voting is implicitly a coercive act because it lends support to a compulsory government. Voting reinforces the legitimacy of the state because the participation of the voters makes it appear that they approve of their government. There are ways of opposing the state other than by voting against the incumbents. And remember, even if the opposition politicians are the lesser of two evils, they are still evil. Such non-political methods as civil disobedience, nonviolent resistance, homeschooling, bettering oneself, and improving one's own understanding of voluntarism all go far in robbing the government of its much sought-after legitimacy. As Thoreau pointed out, all voting is a sort of gaming, like checkers or backgammon. Even voting for the right is doing nothing for it. So whatever you do, don't play the government's game. Don't vote. Do something for the right.
Thank you for listening to Essential Libertarianism. You can check out the archives of all of our episodes at essentiallibertarianism.com. And you can subscribe to future episodes on any podcatcher, including Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Google Play, and more. This has been a Pax Libertas Productions podcast.